New Year's Day, 2008. The air was crisp. Blood Mountain, Georgia. A forest blanketed in dead leaves, streaked with pale gold light cutting through the trees. Meredith Hope Emerson, 24, petite, with her black Labrador Ella by her side, set off on her usual hiking route. She often chose this trail to clear her head, to breathe, to find silence after a year full of noise. There was nothing unusual. A few cars still in the lot. The sun hadn't dipped yet. Just a short hike. What Meredith didn't know was that someone was watching. An old man, a few hundred feet away, half hidden behind the brush, eyes fixed on her every step. He wore a faded baseball cap, a worn-out backpack slung over one shoulder, mud-streaked pants. He didn't blink. He wasn't out for a walk. No dog, no gear, just time, and the forest's complicit silence. It wasn't his first time doing this, and it sure as hell wouldn't be the last. Meredith kept walking toward the rocky incline, unaware she had stepped into the territory of a hunter, a man outside the bounds, a killer who moved through the wild and vanished like wind. The woods stayed quiet. The girl never came back. Meredith Hope Emerson wasn't the first person he watched, and she wasn't the first who didn't come back. He drifted through forests from Florida to Tennessee, driving a beat-up old truck, a kind of rolling shelter packed with cans of food, frayed ropes, scattered bank cards, crumpled maps, and sometimes a knife with blood still on the blade. No one knew exactly when it started. There was no first day, no clear origin story, just a string of quiet vanishings. People who loved the outdoors, who hiked alone and never returned. He didn't kill at random. He didn't stalk victims in the city, where cameras blink and cars pass and people notice. He chose the woods, the last place in America where silence still exists and where you can disappear without making a sound. Out there, he ruled. He'd park near trailheads, sit for hours, sometimes an entire day, just watching, studying, waiting, picking the right person, usually a woman hiking alone, sometimes an older person, occasionally a young couple, but one was enough. Once he picked a target, the tracking began. No rush, no panic. He let them go deeper in. Waited until the trail thinned out, until cell signals dropped, until footsteps were swallowed by wind. Then he closed in. He didn't always strike right away. There were times he followed someone for 3 days and never touched them. It was like he was studying, watching how they moved, how they set up camp, how they reacted to getting lost. Maybe to him, it was all part of the hunt. Then came the moment when fatigue crept in, when the hiker turned around confused, trying to remember the way back, when the sun dipped and the forest turned gold and sickly, like light from another world. That's when he showed himself. Not rushing, not violent at first. He often started by asking for directions, made small talk. His voice was raspy, slow. Just some old man out in the woods, same as anyone else. Who would suspect an old man? Then the knife came out, and the act was over. Meredith was struck in the head with something heavy. Maybe a metal pipe. Maybe the handle of the knife. She didn't die. He loaded her into the truck, tied her hands, locked her in the back. She was kept alive for 4 days. During that time, he forced her to give up her ATM pin. He used her cards to withdraw cash. While the entire state searched for her, he calmly filled up gas, bought supplies, stopped at ATMs. With Meredith still trapped in the truck, breathing, hurting, hopeless. There was something different about him. He didn't just kill. He dragged the fear out. He grew the dread, like it gave him control. Sometimes, he fed his victims. Sometimes he laughed, told stories, even promised he'd let them go if they cooperated. But it was all part of the game, because the ending was always the same. He didn't kill in anger, no frenzied stabbing, no chaos. He waited until he had full control, until the victim was emptied of cards, money, and hope. Then he finished it with a blow to the head, or strangled them, and left their body in the woods like discarded trash. Sometimes he'd try to hide the evidence, bury the corpse, burn the clothes, even dismember the limbs. But most of the time, he just walked away, left the state, found a new park, started over. What set him apart was patience. He didn't act on impulse. He wasn't after blood. He was after power. The kind that lets you hold someone's life in your hands and squeeze. He liked watching people unravel, from hope to fear to complete surrender. That's why he kept Meredith for 4 days. That's why he waited with Cheryl Dunlap. That's why he made his victims live inside that filthy truck, with ropes, tin cans, and the stink of sweat, like they weren't people anymore. By the time he finally struck, everything inside them was already dead. And then he'd drive off. No address, no camera, no trace, just another battered truck on the highway, lost among thousands. No one flagged him down. No one thought twice about the man behind the wheel, blank-eyed, quiet, who had just taken a life hours earlier. He returned to the woods, a new place, and began watching again. To the world, he was just another drifter, maybe a little strange, but not dangerous. An old man living on the fringes. But underneath, he was a machine. No motive, no need for fame, no media circus. Just the quiet of the wilderness, and brutality masked by overgrown grass and dappled light. He could be anyone at the trailhead, the guy sipping coffee, the one fixing his tire, the man sleeping in his car at a rest stop. No one knew, no one looked, no one thought he was the reason others never came back. When police first saw him, washing his truck at a gas station in Georgia, he looked like a tired old man, slouched back, faded cap, mumbling. But there was blood on the floor mats, ropes in the back seat. He didn't resist, didn't say much. When they asked about Meredith, he looked down and muttered, "I took care of the head, don't bother looking." Like he was talking about taking out the trash. The truth is, he wasn't your typical serial killer. No torture chamber, no rituals, no trophies. All he had was the forest, and the forest was enough, because the forest muffles screams, erases footprints, and makes people believe. Maybe the hiker just got lost, but he knew. He always knew. And when Meredith Emerson stepped into the woods that day, she had no idea she'd caught the eye of a man like that. No raving madman, no yelling, just watching, waiting, striking only when no one was left to see. If someone is following you out in the wild, you won't know. He won't come close. He'll just stand there, quiet, patient, and wait until you're at your weakest. No gunshots, no blood on the walls, no witnesses. The deaths he left behind were rarely loud. Just someone who didn't come home. A car sitting still in a trailhead lot for days. A bag of food never opened. A path through the woods, abandoned halfway. To the world, it was a disappearance. To him, it was completion. Winter, 2007. Cheryl Dunlap, 46, Bible school teacher, lived alone in Tallahassee, Florida. A kind woman. Quiet, gentle. She had a weekend ritual. Bring a novel out to Wakula Park, read under the trees, or walk among the pines. One Saturday afternoon, Cheryl left home with a small backpack, a book, and a water bottle. That was the last time anyone saw her. She didn't show up for work Monday. No calls, no messages. Her colleagues alerted the police. But for the first 4 days, the search turned up nothing but trees. Then, on day 5, her bank account showed activity. 3 withdrawals. 3 days in a row. ATM cameras captured a man. Cap low, dark sunglasses, gloves, always angling his face away. A calmness in his body that chilled investigators to the bone. More than a week later, Cheryl's body was found deep in Wakula Forest, half buried beneath rotting leaves. Her legs had been severed. No signs of sexual assault. No frenzied wounds. Everything was clean, methodical, like it had been done before. Many times. And by then, he was long gone. Before anyone realized what they were even chasing. John and Irene Bryant, retired couple from North Carolina, weren't the type to get caught off guard. They were cautious, experienced. They'd lived around forests for decades. They knew how to survive. But knowing doesn't make you untraceable prey. October 2007. They headed into Pisgah National Forest as they had most weekends, carrying radios, maps, and outdoor gear. They never came back. Their car was found days later, locked, no forced entry, water bottles still full, a trail map marked with their intended path. Nothing seemed off. Except for the complete, haunting absence of people. Irene's body was found first. Blunt force trauma to the head. No defensive wounds. Death had come quick, clean. But John was gone. Completely. It took 4 more months to find his remains, hundreds of miles away, near the Georgia border. He had been shot in the head, clothes still on. Nothing stolen, except the money in his bank account. And again, the ATM footage showed a familiar silhouette. An older man, heavy coat, cap pulled low, black gloves, moving slowly, deliberately, like it was just part of the routine. Police in the 2 states never linked the cases. The files sat cold on separate desks for weeks. And in that time, he crossed state lines, kept heading south toward Georgia. Then came Meredith Hope Emerson, the one who changed everything, the youngest, the strongest, and the one who forced him out of the shadows. New Year's Day, 2008. Meredith left her rental home with her dog Ella, headed for a hike on Blood Mountain, a popular spot for runners, hikers, and nature lovers. She had a phone, she had water, she had basic survival training, but none of that could save her from the man watching her from the trees. She was last seen at 11 a.m. Then, silence. Her car was found, phone unreachable. Ella was gone. Police were called within 24 hours. Search teams mobilized fast. But the forest was huge, winding, without direction. By day 3, a witness reported seeing an older man walking with a young woman and a black dog several miles from the parking area. The man looked tense, but no one intervened. When ATM footage matched the man's appearance, the manhunt began. They found him at a car wash, alone, calm. When asked where Meredith was, he didn't answer right away, just stared, then said, "She got me in trouble. She was stronger than I thought." That was it. When police found Meredith's body, shallow grave, about an hour from where she vanished, it was clear she had fought. Scratches on his arms. Her footprints showed she tried to run, but in the end, she was overpowered. No one knows how long she was kept alive. Evidence pointed to at least 3 days. 3 days in that truck. Eating, sleeping, breathing beside him. And then, when he decided she was no longer useful, he ended it. Every case was a movement, every withdrawal, a test, to see if anyone was following. He left just enough behind to raise suspicion, but not enough to act on, until they looked again and connected the dots. It was always the same formula. Victim hiking alone or with an older companion. Remote forest, weak signal, late afternoon strike, hold captive for pin, multiple ATM withdrawals, kill, dump the body, leave the state. Not everyone was found. Some just vanished, left somewhere deep in the quiet sprawl of America's wilds. To him, death didn't need a declaration. It just needed absence. When the case went federal, FBI agents began mapping it all out. The disappearances in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, all linked by one constant, him. But he still wasn't finished. In 2025, from death row, he wrote a letter to a former county cop in Leon County. In it, he spoke of a woman with red hair and shoes too big, who he left in the woods near Tallahassee back in 2006. There had never been a case, no missing persons report. But when they dug into old files, they found one unclaimed body, found nearby, long assumed to be a suicide. He didn't give a name, no explanation, just a final line. You missed more than you think. How many never came back? No one knows. Only that each victim he left behind was a silent scar in the forest. No screaming, no spectacle, just total erasure, murder without proof. And unless he speaks, all we can do is guess. A trail cutting through trees, a woman gone, a car still parked after sunset. No one heard a scream, no one saw a face, but somewhere, in the dark, someone is counting every step you take away from the light. In the world of serial killers, some are caught because they're too violent, too chaotic, or too proud. But he was different. He hid in the blur, thrived in the cracks of the system, and vanished into the indifference of people who never connected the dots between the dead. No notes, no journal, no warning signs online. He didn't use the internet. He wasn't on any psychiatric watch list. No criminal record that raised red flags. And most importantly, he moved. Each case happened in a different state: Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. Places without unified investigative databases. Places where a missing person file lived inside one department's system, but didn't automatically travel across state lines. Cheryl Dunlap was marked possibly lost in an accident in Florida. John and Irene Bryant were considered missing hikers in North Carolina. Only when their bodies were found did the files become homicide investigations. But by then, time had passed. Evidence washed away by rain, wind, and the countless footsteps of other hikers. Every police department only saw their own case. No one saw the full picture. He lived out of a truck, a drifter, a new place every night. No schedule, no credit cards, groceries from gas stations, clothes washed by hand. If he had a cell phone, it was likely dead or useless in the wilderness. When he needed money, he hunted. He didn't pick victims because they were weak. He picked them because they were alone. The kind of people who wouldn't be missed right away. He had a nose for solitude, like it was instinct. Throughout 2007, the disappearances had no obvious pattern. A single woman in Florida, an elderly couple in North Carolina, a college student in Georgia. 3 people, 3 lives, no clear link. Until someone noticed something small: the money. In each case, the victim's ATM card was used a few days after they vanished. Not large amounts, $200, maybe $300 at a time. But the withdrawals were made far from the disappearance site, and every ATM camera showed the same blurry silhouette. Middle-aged man, cap pulled low, sunglasses, head tilted, black gloves. At first, no one thought it was strange. But when the FBI began comparing ATM data across states, it became clear. This was no coincidence. With help from the banks, agents combed through tens of thousands of ATM transactions near national parks across the Southeast. They flagged withdrawals from missing persons' accounts. They mapped out machines used more than once, and soon they found overlap. Some ATMs had been used in multiple cases. When the images were laid side by side, a shape emerged. Same build, same disguise, same posture. That's when they knew. They weren't dealing with a coincidence. They were chasing a serial killer. A man on the move, off the grid, and using the gaps between law enforcement agencies to stay invisible. But knowing he existed was one thing. Tracking him was something else entirely. No license plate, no clear photo, no direct leads to a name or address. Whoever this was lived completely outside the system. No lease, no hotel check-ins, no registered address, no bank account, no medical records. As a last resort, the FBI pushed an alert to every local law enforcement agency in the region, asking if anyone had ever come into contact with an older man living out of a truck frequenting national parks. Then, a woman from Tennessee called. She didn't know his name, but she remembered his eyes. 3 months earlier, she'd been hiking alone in Cherokee Forest. An older man approached, asked for directions. He had a map and a dog. At first, nothing seemed off. But then he started asking where she was headed, when she was coming back, if anyone was expecting her. That's when the chill hit. She ended the conversation, made an excuse to leave. But instead of heading to the main trail, she quietly doubled back on a side path. No running, no panic, just walking, fast, deliberate. The next day, she left the area. For weeks afterward, she felt watched, but no one was there. When she saw the ATM photo on the news, she knew. The eyes, the way he held his head down, and that feeling that he hadn't come to ask for directions. It was the first real lead. From her account, police narrowed down the vehicle, a small utility van, possibly a converted camper. Color unclear, weather worn, like most. But if someone spotted a van like that near a park, with a strange smell, or edging toward the woods, that might be enough. A watch list was built. Highway cams, gas stations, car washes, park ranger posts, all told to report any sightings. But just as quickly, he vanished again. 2 weeks passed. No cards used. No new victims. No one spotted the man from the photo. The forest fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to be keeping his secret. And then, someone survived. Not a victim of an attack, but of an escape. A middle-aged man in northern Georgia reported that while camping near Brasstown Bald, he was followed for hours by a stranger. No words. Just a figure, always at the edge of the trail. He changed paths, still saw the man behind him, always watching. As night fell, he pretended to be on the phone, loudly telling his wife to be ready at the pickup point. The figure disappeared. His story matched earlier cases. The silent trailing, the testing. But this was the first time someone felt it early enough and walked away. A shiver at the right moment. A survival that can't be explained. The FBI began seeing it differently. This wasn't about money. This was about the hunt. He chose targets. He tracked them. Waited until they were tired, isolated, unaware. Not just to attack, but to feel control. He didn't crave blood. He craved silence and fear. From then on, agents increased their presence. Undercover officers staked out parking lots. Warnings were sent to hiker groups. ATM photos, blurry but haunting, were posted in every rest stop in the region. They didn't know where he was, but they knew one thing for sure. He couldn't stay still for long. And when he needed cash again, he'd have to come up for air. You can be cautious. You can hike in groups. You can check your GPS. But there will be a moment when you stop. Somewhere with no signal, no people, no way back. And if someone is watching you from the shadows, you won't know it until it's already too late. Late January 2008, a gray, heavy afternoon in DeKalb County, Georgia. The endless trail of dead ends broke with a phone call from a car wash employee. He reported a strange old man obsessively scrubbing down a battered van with industrial cleaner, wiping every corner like he was trying to erase something more than just dirt. By the time police arrived, the man was still at it, crouched inside the van, focused, silent. He didn't run, didn't turn around. When the flashing lights lit up the soapy foam, he simply stood, tossed his gloves in a bucket, and looked at them. like someone checking the time for an appointment he'd been expecting. There was nothing on him. Inside the van, soaked floors, the harsh stench of cleaner, a knife with hair and blood still on it, a roll of duct tape, dirt-caked gloves, and an old folded map marked with red circles. He didn't resist the cuffs, didn't ask why, didn't demand a lawyer, didn't say a word. At the station, they put him in interrogation room 3, an old white-tiled box lit by humming fluorescent tubes, a metal chair, a scratched wooden table, a camera in the corner. He sat motionless, stone still, hands on the table, thumbs tapping. His eyes were open but vacant, not fixed on anything. No fear, no defiance, just nothing. Across from him sat Lieutenant Donna Callahan, 17 years in, with experience interrogating rapists, war criminals, and men who killed over love. But the man in front of her didn't fit anything. He didn't smile, didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't defend. He was a void shaped like a man. The first 4 hours were dead air. Donna asked about Meredith Emerson. He said nothing. Asked about the van. He stared at his fingernails. Asked about the ATM cards. He rested his chin on his palm. When Donna said, "We found Meredith's blood and hair in your vehicle," he blinked once, then whispered, "I know." Silence followed. Donna laid out photographs. Meredith, Cheryl, the Bryants. He stared at each one slowly, then nodded, just barely. No emotion. Then he said, "I remember the dog. Her name was Ella." That was it. No confession, no denial. Just a piece of memory, cold as stone, tossed into the room. On day 2, the team switched tactics. No more direct questions. They let him speak. They placed food on the table, played soft music, moved the recorder out of sight. He ate, methodically, slowly, like a man having lunch at a nameless diner in some forgotten mountain town. Like no one knew him, and no one asked why he was there. Then, he started to talk, not about crimes, but about roads, forests he liked, spots with few rangers, streams with clean water, parking lots without cameras. He spoke like a park guide, raspy voice, steady, no flourishes, but painfully precise. By day 3, the leaks began. He spoke about picking victims, how he looked for people no one was waiting for, how he watched from just far enough not to raise suspicion, how he could tell who would tire first. He talked about Meredith, not like recounting a crime, but like remembering a failed hunt. She was stronger than I thought, he said, but eventually she got tired. No pride, no grief, just something that happened. When asked why he kept victims alive for days before killing them, he answered, "I don't like surprises. I want them to understand what's happening." The air in the room dropped. He didn't kill in rage, didn't kill for pleasure. He killed when everything was under control, when the other person had been drained of hope. And maybe that was the goal. At one point, a young detective asked if he felt guilty. He barely twitched the corner of his mouth, a gesture somewhere between a smirk and a muscle spasm. You think a predator feels something when it takes down prey. He said a lot, but most of it was shadows. When asked how many victims, he said, "I didn't count." When asked if there were more bodies not yet found, he stayed silent for a long time, then said, "The woods go deep." None of it could be used in court. He knew the law, never signed a statement, never gave an official confession. He was just a man telling stories, remembering the years he roamed. Prosecutors had to rely on DNA, hard evidence, witness statements, and ATM footage to charge him with 4 murders. Meredith Emerson, Cheryl Dunlap, John and Irene Bryant. But everyone in that room knew there were more. He just wasn't saying. A year after the trial, a detective received a letter. No return name, stamped from Florida State Prison. Inside was a hand-drawn map. No date, full of cross-outs, with one red circle near Osceola Trail. No explanation, no signature, just one line, scribbled at the bottom. "I sat here all afternoon, waiting for someone who never came." Police searched the area, found nothing, but in the archives, they uncovered a 2006 report. An unidentified female body, discovered less than half a mile away, marked non-suspicious, never reopened. That's how he stayed present, even after being caught. In prison, he lived quietly. No friends, no visits, no conversations. He read, mostly cartography, nature journals, old novels. Occasionally, he sent letters, sporadic, sparse. Each one a flicker of his shadow, not to confess, but to provoke. One guard said they once saw him sitting for hours, staring at the cement yard, whispering, "The woods were better. The woods know how to keep quiet." He never showed remorse, never sought mercy. When asked if he had anything to leave behind before execution, he said, "You took everything I knew, but not everything I did." To the justice system, Gary Michael Hilton was a death row inmate. Case closed. To the detectives who sat across from him, he was a nightmare that didn't end. A confrontation with something no longer human. And to the forests he walked through, he was just a shadow that passed, leaving soft earth behind, and questions no one wants to dig up. When you stare into the eyes of a killer, you expect rage or regret. But the worst thing is seeing nothing at all. A hollow without bottom. A silence so complete, it feels like it's still hiding somewhere, in the trees. No one is born a killer, but no one really notices when someone slips too soon off the path that shapes what we call being human. Gary Michael Hilton, a name nobody remembers, not even in the story of his own life. Born in 1946 in Atlanta, Georgia, Hilton grew up during a fractured era of American history. War overseas, economic instability, and the quiet paranoia of the post-war years. His father walked out early. His mother remarried a man who drank too much and hit too hard. No one's quite sure how far he made it in school. No college degree, no military rank, no real job to speak of. A man blurred at the edges, drifting slowly out of the frame of normal life, step by quiet step, unnoticed. In the 1970s, he worked as a delivery driver, short-term gigs, low-rung jobs across several states. At one point, he drove a billboard truck for an ad company, then vanished after a heated argument. No close friends, no lasting family ties, no roots holding him anywhere. In 1998, he was diagnosed with mild mental illness following an assault on an acquaintance. The medical notes were brief: intermittent delusions, abnormal response to authority, no follow-up. He walked out of the clinic and never came back. From then on, he drifted, lived in his van, cut ties with society, sometimes in Georgia, sometimes Florida, sometimes the Carolinas. National parks became his shelter, not because he loved nature, but because no one asks questions there. No one asks for ID when an old man sits quietly beneath the trees. He could vanish, and no one would report him missing. America has hundreds of thousands like him. People living on the borderlines, in the dead zones, places where the law doesn't quite reach and no one bothers to look. The system doesn't know what to call them: homeless, mentally unstable, just not compatible. Hilton lived in that space, a crack in the structure, a place where no one rescues you and no one notices when you start to kill. Society didn't create him, but it did let him slip away without a fight. After a months-long trial, Gary Michael Hilton was sentenced to death in Florida for the murder of Cheryl Dunlap and received additional life sentences in Georgia and North Carolina for the other 3 victims. He was transferred to death row at Union Correctional Institution, a remote concrete place where sunlight slips through narrow bars and nothing ever really moves. There, he lived for 15 more years. No friends behind bars, no visitors, no letters, except from journalists, investigators, and a few obsessed strangers trying to understand why. He never answered. No confessions, no memoirs, no remorse. In 2023, Hilton was found dead in his cell one quiet summer morning. No signs of violence, no final note. A death as silent as the way he killed, unwitnessed, unheard, untouched. The official report said simply, cardiac arrest, age 77. No one claimed the body. He was cremated, his ashes scattered behind the prison over a nameless patch of ground. Like so many others who died waiting for the end. But what he left behind was heavier than his name. A trail of deaths that can't be confirmed, disappearances that won't close, and a lesson in just how helpless the system becomes when it faces a man who lives like a ghost. After his death, the FBI reopened 12 missing persons cases from the same time period, all previously shelved for lack of evidence. Many of the victims were never identified. Some families began asking questions again, but the answers, if they exist, are buried somewhere beneath the soil, deep in the woods, in places no one remembers how to find. He died the way he lived, a quiet shadow moving through the world, leaving behind holes that never filled in. No one mourned him, but no one forgot him either. The case is closed, the name recorded, the sentence delivered. But the footprints he left behind don't disappear with a line on a file. Somewhere out there are still woods no one has searched. Still trails where the last thing seen was a pair of eyes, and then nothing. He wasn't the first, and he sure won't be the last. We like to believe evil has a face, but more often it looks familiar, quiet, and just unremarkable enough that no one ever thinks to ask questions. We live among the cracks, and sometimes we're the ones who built them. Then act surprised when something slips through. If stories like this stay with you, if they haunt you long after the screen goes dark, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next file we open. And if there's anything about this case that unsettled you, raised questions, or won't let you go, leave a comment below. Because maybe what you notice is the one piece someone else missed. Some cases close, but they never really end.